Today we're talking about coffee and different kinds of coffee. So in this picture, this is a latte, but you can't just call a latte coffee. If you go to different countries, people will talk about coffee in different ways. So we're going to start by talking about what it's like to get coffee in the United States. Okay? Now, where I come from a place called Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, there's a place called Dunkin' Donuts. Or now it's just called Dunkin'. Because they started as a donut shop, but now they focus on coffee. Like most people will go to Dunkin' Donuts, they skip the donuts, and they get a coffee. And kind of like how Taiwan has 7-Eleven everywhere, Massachusetts has Dunkin' Donuts everywhere. You can be going to work and you stop at Dunkin' Donuts, get a cup of coffee. Or you stop at Dunkin' Donuts, get a coffee and a snack, like a little breakfast. And so where I come from, these are everywhere. And the coffee is quite good. So if you're in the United States and you're going to Dunkin' Donuts, what kind of coffee are you going to get? Well, you can see there are two different kinds of machines. Here is one kind of machine. This is the standard coffee machine in America. You see these pots here. The coffee beans go in this part here. The water will slowly drip into the coffee pot. Okay? This is not very common here in Taiwan. In Taiwan, you will see this kind of machine at McDonald's. You might see it at Starbucks, but the machine looks a little bit different. So this kind of coffee is hard to find in Taiwan. I like it, so unfortunately, it's hard for me to find it. You might not really know what this is, but we'll talk about that in a second. Another kind of machine is over here. This is what you can find in Taiwan in most places. This is called an espresso machine. We'll talk about that more later. So in America, coffee machines are usually like this. In Taiwan, coffee machines are usually like this. These are like fancier coffee machines, okay? Now, if you're ordering anything, either a drink or food, you can use some of these questions. And all of them are okay. So you can say, can I have blah, blah, blah? So can I have a coffee? Simple. To make it a little more polite, you could change can to could. Could I have a latte? And that's totally fine. It's great. So could I have is a little bit more polite. People will also say, can I get? So can I have and can I get are about the same. Can I get a cappuccino? These are three questions you can ask. All three are totally fine. Could is a little bit more polite. So if you want to be careful, use could I have blah, blah, blah. And one other thing, while we're here, these letters link. You might have heard of linking before. So don't say, can I have? Say, can I? The N-I goes together. Can I have? Can I have a coffee? Can I have a coffee? You can hear that it's nigh. You don't just say, can I? Can I? It's a little bit tricky, but that's called linking in English. Same thing with could. If you say this word by itself, there's not much D, could. But with an I there, it sounds like could I? Could I? Can you hear that? It almost sounds like DI. Could I have a coffee? Or could I have a latte? So this kind of linking is important for sounding natural. Don't say, could I have a coffee? It sounds like you're choking. Could I have a coffee? Could I have a coffee? Got it? And then this one again, N-I. Can I get a cappuccino? Now, two other ways to ask for something or order something. You can say, I'll have. So if you're talking about food, like we often use the word have. You shouldn't say, well, don't say shouldn't, Kyle. It's better to say have when you're talking about food. I had lunch today instead of I ate lunch today. I ate lunch is okay, but I had lunch sounds better. Same with dinner. I had dinner already. That sounds better than I ate dinner already. Both are okay, but using have for food sounds a little bit more natural, okay? So if you're ordering something, because it's something you're gonna have and eat, we can say I'll have. So I'll have a latte. And this is totally fine to say. It's not super duper polite, but it's fine. So you'll hear this all the time. Oh, I'll have a cup of coffee. Okay? Oh, I should say that too. A cup of coffee. When you say this fast, of doesn't sound like of. Did you hear how I said it? A cuppa coffee. A cup of coffee. So a cuppa coffee. It sounds like a cuppa coffee. Oops. Oops. Jeez. Typing is hard. So a cuppa coffee. The word of often sounds like the letter A. A cuppa coffee. So don't say a cup of coffee. It sounds like I'm choking. Say a cup of coffee. Okay? So I'll have a cup of coffee. Got it? So we want to blend these letters together, link them together, sound more natural. Okay, so I'll have a cup of coffee. Okay? Another way to say it is I'd like. This is I would like. I'd like a latte, please. Always remember please. Okay. And then also if you want to add something more, just add the word with. So could I have a cup of coffee with milk and sugar? Or could I have a cup of coffee with cream? Or could I have a cup of coffee with a shot of espresso if you want it extra strong? Okay? So we're going to review these as we go forward, but those are 5 ways to ask or order for something. Okay? And we just use with to give more detail or changes. Okay? So, first up, what is coffee? If you go to the United States and you say coffee, what do you mean? Like I said before, this kind of machine is the normal coffee machine in the United States. It is called a drip coffee machine. You put coffee in here and the water will slowly drip into the pot. And it makes a lot of coffee, and the coffee is not very strong. And the flavor is very even. Like, so it's coffee flavor in all of the water because it dripped slowly. So this is a coffee machine. In America, we just call it regular coffee. So if you go to Dunkin' Donuts and ask for regular coffee, you're going to get this kind. I'm not sure if you've ever tried this kind of coffee. This is not an Americano. We're going to see what an Americano is later. So this is, the water goes through the coffee beans and you get this black liquid or dark brown. Okay? And it looks like this cup. And you can have a full cup of coffee because it's not super strong. Okay? This you can find at Starbucks in Taiwan. It's called coffee of the day. So if you want to try this kind of coffee at Starbucks, this is what I order. But nobody knows what it is. I'm the only person who orders it. It's called本日咖啡. It's coffee of the day. They have a big machine in the back where they make drip coffee. So if you want to try this, you can get it at Starbucks. They also have these machines at McDonald's, which they call classic coffee, like classic American style coffee, 经典咖啡. So if you want to try this kind of coffee, Starbucks, 本日咖啡, or McDonald's, 经典咖啡. But you can't really find it other places. If you get a Americano, not exactly the same. Now, if you're in America, it's called regular coffee, or black coffee, or drip coffee, because that's how it's made. Similar to American coffee, regular coffee, as it's called in the US, is called pour-over coffee. This is a little bit different, but it's similar. It's made in a similar way. The water is slowly poured on the coffee, and it slowly drips through. It tastes a bit different, but it's similar because you're dripping the water slowly over it. Okay? So if you're in the United States, if someone says coffee, they're going to mean this kind of coffee. If you go to a place and get a regular coffee, it's this kind of coffee. If you get a black coffee, it's this kind of coffee. Okay? This is in America. In Europe, they don't really have this. So the US is a special place. Now, because this is an American thing, later we'll find out why something is called Americano. Okay, but later. To practice ordering, if you go to a coffee shop or a breakfast shop, let's say you go to a place serving breakfast, you could say, "Oh, could I have a coffee?" That's it. Or you could say, "Could I have a regular coffee?" Okay? Or "Could I have a black coffee?" Then you're going to get your coffee black, like this picture. If you go to Dunkin' Donuts, the place I mentioned, a regular coffee, they'll add sugar and cream for you. To them, that's regular. So you have to be careful. Not careful, but if you say, "Could I have a regular coffee?" maybe they will make it their way. That's kind of like in Taiwan, like 特调, they get it ready for you. So in Dunkin' Donuts in America, a regular coffee is black coffee with cream and sugar. I think it's way too sweet. So I would say, "Could I have a regular coffee with no cream, no sugar?" So that's what I would say. You could just say black coffee. Okay? Then they might ask you this. You say, "Hey, could I have a coffee?" They might ask you, "Would you like cream and sugar?" And you can say what you want. "I'll have cream, no sugar, please." Or "I'll have some milk, no sugar." Or "I'll have some sugar, no milk." Whatever. Up to you. Okay? So that's coffee. Now, what is espresso? We're going to get to Americano later. Espresso is what's common in Europe. So coffee, like we saw, is common in America. Espresso is what you will find in Europe. You can find this in America, of course, but it's not the most common. In Europe, espresso is the most common. Espresso. So be careful of the way you say it. Espresso. The stress is on the middle. Espresso. Do not say espresso. Some people will say this, but it's a mistake. Like express means very fast, but this is not express, it's espress. It's a slight difference, but you don't want that k sound for the X. So espresso. Got it? Espresso is 濃縮咖啡, which is concentrated coffee. And that's because they use this special kind of machine, and the water is pushed through the coffee beans. So it comes out very strong. And usually espresso is served in a little cup if you drink just espresso. Part of the way espresso is made is that they tamp the coffee beans. Tamp means to press it down. Oh, press? Just like espresso. So they press it down, squeeze it so the coffee comes out very strong. Tamping is a word for pushing down on this thing to make the coffee beans really tight. Okay? So this is what's common in Taiwan. It's what's common in Europe. Okay? If you drink espresso, you might get a solo espresso. Solo is Italian for one, and so that's a single shot of espresso. So one amount of espresso. And if you go to Europe, maybe you just buy that and drink it, and then you go for a walk. You might get a doppio. That's Italian for 2 shots of espresso. So you can call this a double shot of espresso. These 2 words you don't need to remember, but you might hear it if you really like coffee. Oh, I'll have a solo espresso. I'll have a doppio espresso. This here, I think, is a solo. Down here, they're making a doppio because it's 2 streams going into 1 cup. It's a double shot of espresso. So you might say, I'll have a solo espresso, or I'll have a single shot of espresso. And espresso's very strong, very bitter, but very good. I love espresso. Okay. Now, espresso is the base for most coffee drinks. American style coffee, you just drink this, you add some sugar, you add some milk, and that's your drink. Espresso, you start with espresso, and then you add things to make many different kinds of drinks. So what kinds of drinks can you get? One is called an Americano. Okay, we finally made it. You can also get something called a long black. Now these 2 drinks are almost the same, but let's start talking about an Americano. Now this looks the same as the American style coffee, right? I used the same picture, oops, because they look the same. An Americano, an American style coffee look the same, but they're different because of how they're made. This kind of coffee, American style coffee, is slowly dripped through and it's not very strong. So, Americans expect this kind of coffee. This is what Americans want to have in the morning. Your coffee is not very strong, but you drink a lot of it, maybe a cup or 2 cups. So when people went to Europe, they didn't want just espresso. They wanted their big cup of weak coffee. And so because the people who ordered it are Americans, they gave the name Americano to this kind of drink. Americans wanted American coffee. They went to Italy. They couldn't get it. And so the guy in Italy said, oh, Americano. So they take American, add an O, and we make a new drink. Now, how is this made? You start with some espresso, and then you add hot water on top. Now, the result looks the same. It's kind of a weak coffee that you can drink a big cup, but it's different because of how it's made. And because how it's made is different, the flavor is different, okay? This coffee is brewed slowly, so the flavors are kind of light. This is brewed very strong, so maybe the flavors are a little bit stronger, okay? So Americano and American coffee are similar, but not exactly the same. Okay, now what is a long black? A long black is what people will get in Australia. Here in Taiwan, you get an Americano. They put espresso in your cup, they pour water on top. A long black is the same thing, but change the order. They put water in the cup, put espresso on top. People will argue about if it's the same or if it's different. Why would someone make a long black? Well, they say if you put the espresso in the bottom, when you pour the water in, it changes the coffee. It makes it not as good. For a long black, you have water. You put the espresso on top. And so it can keep more of the espresso flavor. And that bubbly stuff on top is safe. And so you get more bubbles and people think it tastes better. But is it really different? I don't know. I think it's probably almost the same. So that's what an Americano is. That's what a long black is. So you could say, excuse me, can I get an Americano? Easy peasy. Okay? So Americano and American coffee are different, right? So here's an example. Here's from Starbucks, their little image of the difference between an Americano and brewed coffee. Brewed is another way to say slowly made, okay? So the brewed coffee, it's all the same from the top to the bottom. And so it has notes of cocoa and toasted nuts. So cocoa is like chocolate. Toasted nuts means, well, nuts that are cooked. And the idea is that the flavor is the same in the whole cup. To make an Americano, they have rich caramelly espresso shots. So espresso at the bottom, hot water, and the crema. The crema is those bubbles on top of your coffee, or the bubbles on top of espresso. So they look the same, but they're a little bit different, and they taste a little bit different. Okay? So maybe you have to be a coffee addict to care, but I drink coffee every day. So I kind of care. Okay. What are some other kinds of coffee drinks? Well, the common ones that are made with milk are right here. And these are made with espresso. So all of these start with espresso, and then you add milk. And they're all similar, but a little bit different. First up is the most common one. You've probably had a latte before. Now remember, trust your ears, not your eyes. It sounds like latte, even though it looks like late or lat. But that's because it comes from Italian, latte. The E sounds like A-Y. A latte is this one in the middle. It's espresso, or here it's a double shot of espresso, and then steamed milk. So about half milk, and then foam on top. Foam is like bubbles. Steamed milk means they put hot air in, they put steam into the milk so it is light. That's why it's called steamed milk. You can see here again, a shot of espresso, a lot of steamed milk, and then a little bit of foamed milk. Foam meaning the bubbles on top. The next kind is called a macchiato. A macchiato is less common. Macchiato. Again, trust your ears. The CH sounds like a K. Macchi. The I sounds like a long E. E. Macchiato. Macchiato. Because it's Italian, not English. A macchiato. Macchiato is kind of like the word mark in English. You mark your coffee. At Starbucks, a macchiato is kind of like a latte, but a real macchiato, if you go to Italy, will be a shot of espresso and a dollop of milk, meaning a little, like a spoon of milk. So here, the same thing. Oh, no, that's different. I'm sorry. Macchiato, shot of espresso with a tiny bit of milk to mark the espresso. A macchiato is really nice if you get a real one. Next, a common one. My dad likes to get cappuccinos if we go to a fancy restaurant. This is a cappuccino. Usually it's in a short cup and it's really wide. A cappuccino is 1/3 espresso, 1/3 steamed milk, and 1/3 milk froth or foam. So this is like a latte, but it has less milk and more foam. So it's a lot of foam on top, and it's a nice drink. So cappuccino and latte are similar. Latte, more milk. Cappuccino, less milk, more foam. Good question. What's the difference between crema and foam? Crema, why am I in Chinese? Crema is bubbles that are on the espresso. I'll put that under here. Bubbles on espresso. Great question. So crema. This is not a very common word. You only know what crema is if you love coffee. So if you're here listening to this, you probably love coffee. So crema means, let's see, not this. Here's this cup of espresso. There's no milk at all. No milk, no cream, but you still get these light brown bubbles. This right here, that's called the crema. Okay? Is this English class or coffee class? So these bubbles that come from the espresso, this is called crema. Okay? So some people think the crema is very important. If you get a long black, people think a long black is better because it can keep some of the crema from the espresso. But there's no milk, right? So crema is actually like a kind of foam. It's a coffee foam. Foam just means bubbles. When I'm talking about the foam here, this is milk foam. Oh, come on. Milk foam, meaning like not just milk, but bubbles of milk. But great. So yeah, in these drinks, because there's so much milk, you don't see much crema. On this latte here, you can see a little bit of crema that's starting to mix with the milk. But yeah, the crema is the bubbles on the espresso. Good question. We're getting into technical coffee information. Okay. Whew, where are we? Okay. So a latte. Lots of milk, some espresso, a tiny bit of foam. Macchiato. Espresso and a tiny bit of milk. Cappuccino. Espresso, some milk, and then a lot of foam. All three are same ingredients, just different amounts. Then a flat white. This is something that's from Australia, again. So if it's a color coffee, long black or flat white, then it's probably from Australia. A flat white. This is a double shot of espresso and micro-foamed milk, which I think is just foamed milk. So more foamy, more bubbles than in a latte. I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever had a flat white. I've never been to Australia. And so these are not very common in other places. But a flat white, shot of espresso with milk on top. But maybe no foam or very little foam. So that's a little tricky. But maybe if you've been to Australia, you can teach me. Okay? So these are common espresso drinks. All of them start with espresso. Now, one other kind of coffee, we won't go forever, but one other kind of coffee is cold brew. I like cold coffee, so cold brew is something I like to get. Iced coffee is really good. It's just coffee with ice. In the United States, if you get iced coffee, it will be regular coffee and then they add ice. Here in Taiwan, if you get an iced coffee, it will be an Americano and they add ice. Okay? Cold brew is different. What is cold brew? Cold brew means they make the coffee, they brew the coffee, and the water is cold. Brew means make coffee. So usually when you make coffee, you brew it with hot water, but cold brew means you brew the water, you brew the coffee with cold water. And the way you do that is you put water with your coffee and let it sit in the refrigerator for a long time, maybe a day. And it is less bitter, it's a little bit more sweet, without sugar. So cold brew is really nice. And it has a lot of caffeine. Caffeine is what gives you energy. So if you like getting energy from coffee, cold brew might be a good choice. So you could say, excuse me, can I have a medium cold brew? This is a common drink. Okay. Next up. Just because we're here, we're doing coffee, might as well tell you everything. Maybe it's too much. But another common way to make coffee is called a French press. This thing here is a French press. It's called a French press because it comes from France. Like espresso, the word is Italian because it comes from Italy. A French press, we call it French because it's from France. What do, you put coffee grounds into your French press. This thing is called a French press. Then you put in hot water, let it sit for maybe 5 minutes, and then you press down and you pour into your cup. French press makes the coffee pretty strong and it's pretty good. This is kind of in the middle between American style coffee and espresso. It's somewhere in the middle. Not very light, not very strong. It's in the middle. It's pretty nice. There's another kind of thing in America that my friend has called an AeroPress. This is a cool little device where you can make 1 cup of coffee really fast and easy. You put in the coffee, put in the water, and press down. And it's kind of like making an espresso, but you do it by hand. You don't need that big machine. So that's a cool little thing to make some strong coffee. Okay, now just a couple more things. Let's talk about special coffees. So some fancy things you might try. This one over here, you can see there's chocolate on top. So that's called a cafe mocha. Cafe is another word for coffee. This is coffee in Italian. Cafe, I think? Yeah, una cafe. So cafe mocha. Mocha is a word meaning chocolate. It looks like mocha, but no, this is mocha. This CH sounds like a K. Mocha. Well, because I said it, I'll just tell you. If you want to say mocha, it's matcha, which comes from Japanese, like Japanese green tea. Mocha is matcha. Different, very different than mocha. Okay, one other coffee that was popular on the internet a couple years ago was called Dalgona coffee. I don't know if anyone's still making it, but it looks like this. So sometimes there are new ways to make coffee. This is where you whip instant coffee 500 times until it makes this foam, and then you put it on top of milk. It's called Dalgona coffee. I've never tried it, but it sounds interesting. Now, this other one is rare, but it's kind of fun to learn. This is called affogato. Well, not like that. Affogato. Affogato. Even though it's an O, you can say affogato. That is espresso with ice cream. Pretty cool, right? So you pour your coffee onto the ice cream and then drink it like that. Sounds pretty good. This is fun to say because there's a silly joke. You can ask your friend, oh, geez, what do you call that drink that's ice cream with coffee? You go, oh, affogato. Do you get it? Pretty stupid. Like, I forgot. All of you are probably crying. Oh God, that's so bad. But what do you call that coffee with ice cream and espresso? Affogato. Oh my God, what a lame joke. So you could go to a coffee shop and say, could I have an affogato? They say, oh, do you remember now? Never mind, I'll stop. Okay, another one is something Duffy mentioned earlier. This is called an Irish coffee. Irish coffee is maybe you're on vacation, you want to have something special, and it looks pretty nice. What an Irish coffee is, you have coffee, you have sugar in coffee, and then you add whiskey. Usually they use Irish whiskey, whiskey being an alcohol. Irish whiskey, there's one called Jameson, and that's the common thing for Irish coffee. So sugar, coffee, whiskey, and then whipped cream on top. So this is whipped cream. And maybe you can add a garnish, like garnish means something on top to make it look nice. You could do some spices on top or a piece of like a coffee bean. But in San Francisco, you can go to this shop and they make lots of Irish coffee because it's the famous drink there. Because it's amazing. It's super delicious. It's coffee and it's sweet and it has a little bit of whiskey flavor to make it nice. And the cream on top is nice and sweet too. So it's a nice dessert. So I recommend trying an Irish coffee. If you ever go to San Francisco, go to this place, get an Irish coffee, and you will be happy. Don't have 5 of them, just one, but it's super good. Okay, so that's Irish coffee. You could say, excuse me, I'll have an Irish coffee. And he'll say, right up. And he makes 10 of them at the same time because they're too popular. Okay, last but not least, when you're getting coffee, sometimes they might ask you how you want your coffee. Like Starbucks, you can choose this. Sometimes at like special coffee shops, they might let you choose the roast. So coffee beans, that's what these are. And the roast means how much they cook the coffee beans, how much they roast them. And that will change the flavor. You could have a light roast, a medium dark roast, or a dark roast. And those will change the flavors. Like a light roast will be a lighter flavor and has citrus notes. Citrus is kind of like lemon or orange. A dark roast will be smoky, like a little bit stronger, maybe a little more bitter. Okay? And then medium is somewhere in the middle. Starbucks says the same. They don't call it light roast, they call it blonde roast. So their blonde roast is light and mellow. Their medium roast, they say is smooth and balanced because it's in the middle. And dark roast is fuller bodied and bold. Fuller bodied means like there's more flavor there. It doesn't feel light, it feels like there's a lot. And bold means it's like strong flavors. Maybe it's intense. Okay? So blonde roast, medium roast, and dark roast. This is what you might see at Starbucks. Here in Taiwan, if you get the coffee of the day, which is like regular American style coffee, usually it's going to be medium roast. But if you're in America and you get a regular coffee, you might have a choice. They might say, oh, what kind of coffee do you want? It's like, oh, could I have a regular coffee? It's like, okay, what kind of beans do you want? Or what kind of roast? You say, oh, I want the blonde roast, the medium roast, or the dark roast. You choose what you're in the mood for, okay? So, that's a lot, but that's everything for coffee for today. We talked about a lot of different things. Let's review really quick. So, where I come from, Dunkin' Donuts is everywhere. So we talked about different ways to ask for something. In the United States, if you say the word coffee, people think of this kind of drip coffee or brewed coffee. And it's kind of light, but it's really nice, okay? And then in Europe, you'll get espresso usually. And this is what's most common in Taiwan too. And you can use this espresso to make a drink called an Americano, which is kind of like American coffee, but this is espresso with water. And then you can use espresso to make other espresso drinks like lattes, cappuccinos, and macchiatos and flat whites. All of these are similar, but you change how much milk is in it. If you want a lot of milk, you get a latte. If you want less milk, you get a cappuccino. If you want very little milk, you get a macchiato. But that might be just in Italy. And then we talked about cold brew, French presses. I like these, but I don't have one right now. And then we talked about some special coffees like, oh, what is that called? Affogato. Just kidding. And then we talked about Irish coffee and some different coffee bean roasts. So I hope you think this was interesting. I want to hear, what kind of coffee do you like to drink? So let me know, leave a comment, leave a message, and I'm curious if you've ever tried American style coffee. If not, if you're here in Taiwan, go to Starbucks and get a本日咖啡. It's a little bit strong sometimes because it might sit there for a while because I'm the only person who orders it. Or you can go to McDonald's and get a 经典咖啡. Just don't get too much sugar because then you won't taste the coffee. Okay, so let's stop here for today. I hope you enjoyed our coffee conversation, and I hope you had a good time and learned something new. So yeah, let me know your favorite kinds of coffee, and tomorrow, remember, go get something nice. Maybe you can try something new. You could get macchiato for a change, or try a cappuccino at a fancy coffee shop instead of your usual Americano. Okay, so let's stop here for today. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.